The forest stretched far and wide behind the Andersons' home. John, Lisa, and their young daughter Emma loved wandering its quiet trails, enjoying the calm that came with being surrounded by nature. One day, while walking near the edge of their property, a faint whimper made them stop in their tracks. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make them pause. Something, or someone, was in trouble. Curious and a little concerned, the family began moving toward the sound. As they carefully stepped through a thick patch of trees, what they saw on the other side made their hearts stop. Down in a small clearing, 5 bear cubs were cornered by 3 wolves. The wolves were ready to strike, tense, hungry, and on edge. John immediately tightened his grip on Emma's hand and gave Lisa a worried look. It was dangerous, and while it broke his heart to see the cubs like that, he told himself this was just how the wild worked. There wasn't much they could do. He started to slowly back away and motioned for his family to do the same. But Emma didn't move. She stayed rooted to the spot, her eyes locked on the helpless cubs. Something about the moment held her. Without warning, Emma pulled free from her dad's hand and ran toward the scene. She scrambled down a slope and stopped just at the tree line. Then she began grabbing rocks and sticks and flinging them at the wolves. The pack paused, caught off guard by the sudden noise. Emma was small enough to stay hidden, and the wolves couldn't tell where the distraction was coming from. Realizing Emma had put herself in danger, her parents knew they had to act fast. John ran after her, shouting and waving his arms to draw the wolves' attention away. The noise and movement gave the cubs just the chance they needed. One by one, they stumbled to their feet and darted into the trees, bumping into each other in their rush to escape. Meanwhile, Lisa had circled around and was guiding the cubs farther from the danger. She spoke softly, keeping her tone steady as she helped lead the frightened little bears into safer ground. They followed her, unsure but willing, and she stayed close to them through the thick underbrush. Back in the clearing, the wolves were now furious. Their prey was gone, and the man in front of them was the only thing left. John kept shouting, backing away, anything to keep them focused on him and not on Emma. He wasn't thinking about himself, only about keeping her safe. But just as things were reaching a breaking point, something moved in the trees. It was big, too big to be ignored. A low, deep growl echoed through the woods. John's blood turned cold. Whatever it was, he didn't want to stick around to find out. And neither did the wolves. In an instant, the pack scattered, sprinting off in all directions. John didn't wait either. He ran back toward Emma, who was standing in the clearing, waiting for him. John scooped Emma into his arms and ran, his heart still racing from everything that had just happened. Somehow, even with all the chaos around them, they made it out without a scratch. But their ordeal was far from over. After a few minutes, his sprint turned into a steady jog, and once he felt they were far enough, he finally let Emma down. He held on to her hand and tried to lead her away, reassuring her that Lisa would find her way back home. But Emma didn't budge. She just shook her head, her eyes serious. Somehow she knew they couldn't leave yet. Still, she let her dad guide them through the trees, even if every step felt wrong. John kept looking over his shoulder, making sure the wolves weren't following them. Just as he started to believe they were safe, a sudden scream tore through the forest. It was sharp, panicked, and unmistakably Lisa. His heart stopped, then it slammed back into action. Without thinking, John spun around and ran toward the sound, faster than he ever had before. He dodged tree trunks and jumped over fallen logs as the cries grew louder and more desperate. When he burst through the trees, he was met with a terrifying sight. Lisa was running across a clearing, trying to push the cubs ahead of her. Not far behind, maybe 60 feet or so, one wolf trailed them. It looked like a young female, smaller, thinner, a little uncertain, but still a real threat. The cubs struggled through the tall grass, tripping and tumbling as Lisa tried to herd them along. Her fear was obvious, but so was her determination. She was doing everything she could to keep those little bears safe. John froze for a split second, overwhelmed by panic. But then instinct kicked in. He scanned the ground and spotted a thick fallen branch. Grabbing it with both hands, he held it up like a weapon. It wasn't much of a plan, he knew that, but it was all he had. He knelt beside Emma, gave her a quick squeeze, and told her to stay hidden. Then he stood, took a steadying breath, and ran out into the open. He sprinted straight toward Lisa and the cubs, not at the wolf, but to block its path. With the branch raised and his feet planted, he stood between the predator and its target. He met the wolf's eyes with every ounce of courage he could pull together. The wolf stopped. Faced with this unexpected challenge, it hesitated. For a tense moment, neither John nor the wolf moved. His heart pounded in his chest, and sweat dripped down his forehead as he locked eyes with the animal. Lisa pulled the bear cubs in closer, crouching around them protectively. Her instincts had fully kicked in. Nothing was getting past her. From the edge of the clearing, Emma watched silently, her hands clenched at her sides, hoping her parents would be okay. The wolf let out a low growl and inched forward, baring its teeth. She was getting irritated, maybe even angry, at the man standing between her and an easy meal. But before she could make her next move, a long howl echoed from deep within the forest. It was another wolf, one of her pack, calling her back. She paused. Then, with a sharp howl of her own, she backed off. Her eyes flicked toward the trees, and in the blink of an eye, she turned and vanished into the woods, following the call of her group. John didn't move until she was completely gone. Then he slowly lowered the branch, the weight of everything catching up with him at once. Across the clearing, Lisa had started guiding the cubs back into the tree line. They were still scared, but for now, safe. The Andersons were worn down, but still standing. The worst seemed to be over, until the howls rang out again. This time they were closer. The pack wasn't done yet. They were regrouping. Emma ran toward her parents, her small arms wrapping around them the second she reached them. They held her tight, grateful beyond words. But around them, the forest had changed. The air felt heavier. The smell of wet dirt was strong, and a cold breeze swept through the trees as rain started to fall, slow and steady. They didn't know where to go. And just when it all started to feel hopeless, Emma stepped forward, her face steady. "Follow me. I know where to go," she said, pointing in the opposite direction of the howls. John and Lisa exchanged a quick glance. It didn't make much sense, but they had no better plan. If Emma said she knew the way, they were going with her. She moved fast, her small frame weaving through the trees like she'd lived in them forever. All those days exploring the woods had given her an edge, and now her calm in the middle of chaos was all her family had to lean on. The storm clouds above darkened, the wind pushing the trees around them. But Emma pressed on, and her parents followed, keeping the cubs close. Eventually, she led them to a hidden spot at the base of a huge tree. Tucked beneath the roots was a narrow entrance, just wide enough to crawl through. It led into a cave, her special hideout, one she'd discovered long ago. It wasn't big, but it was dry and safe. They all climbed inside. The storm hit moments later, the sound of wind and rain rumbling through the cave walls. It was a strange comfort, that noise, reminding them they'd made it. For now. The cubs curled up next to Emma, finally starting to calm down. Their whimpers softened as they leaned into her. Around them, the family sat quietly, listening to the storm outside and wondering what would come next. The wild still had more in store, and they'd need each other to face it. Rain started pouring over the cave's entrance, turning it into a curtain of water. What had once been a gentle sound now pounded down in waves. And just when things seemed calm for a moment, the wolves howled again, louder, closer, their voices riding the wind like a warning. The storm wasn't stopping, and with each roll of thunder, the tension inside the cave grew heavier. Lisa suggested they waited out a bit longer before heading back, but John wasn't so sure. Staying meant safety for now, but it also meant a higher chance of being found, by the wolves or something else. Other animals would be looking for shelter too. And the darker it got, the harder it would be to find their way home. They couldn't afford to wait. Then, from the quietest voice in the room, came a bit of light. Emma spoke up. She told them she knew a path, a special one, that would lead them straight home. John and Lisa turned toward her, surprised. They gently asked how she could possibly know a way through the forest, especially in this kind of weather. But Emma just smiled, her eyes lit with a quiet certainty only a child could carry. "I play in these woods all the time," she said. "The animals show me. It's like a secret game." Her parents exchanged a look. It sounded like imagination. But there was something in her voice, so honest, so sure, that they couldn't ignore. John knelt beside her and asked again, this time more seriously, if she was truly sure. "Absolutely," Emma said, without a moment of doubt. She had gotten them this far, found the cave when they were lost. Maybe she really did know something they didn't. Lisa sighed, then gave a soft nod. "We trust you, Emma. Lead the way." Just then a burst of thunder shook the ground. It was almost deafening. The cubs, sensing that something was changing, pressed closer to Lisa. They were ready to move again. John grabbed the branch he had used earlier. It had helped before. It might help again. Lisa took one last glance at the storm still raging outside. Then John turned to Emma and told her to stay close. They'd follow, but they had to move carefully. The moment they stepped outside, the storm swallowed them. Wind whipped through the trees, and rain hit them hard. The path Emma mentioned wasn't easy to spot, not in this kind of darkness, but they pushed on. Mud clung to their shoes and slowed every step. The cubs, soaked and shivering, kept close behind. Even in the middle of the chaos, no one questioned Emma. They believed in her. But just as they were starting to find a rhythm, a sudden yelp split through the noise. One of the cubs had fallen, the storm had knocked it off balance, and it disappeared from view. Panic hit instantly. The family stopped in their tracks, scanning everything around them, but the crashing thunder and flashes of lightning drowned out all other sounds. They couldn't hear the cub, and they couldn't see where it had gone. Emma didn't stop to think. She scanned the storm-blurred woods, eyes darting across the chaos. Pushing forward through the cold wind and rain, she was determined to bring the cubs back together. Every second stretched out painfully. Drenched and freezing, she kept moving, her small body fighting against the storm. And then, just barely, she caught sight of something. There, tucked beneath a large fern, was the missing cub, curled up and trembling. Without a moment's hesitation, Emma rushed over and gently scooped it into her arms. Relief surged through her as the cub nuzzled close. Soon after, the rest of the family reached her, soaked and exhausted, but whole again. With the lost cub safe and the group reunited, they pushed on. Emma led the way, her focus fixed on the path ahead. Around them, the forest roared. Branches shook, the trail was hidden in shadow, and the storm kept pressing in. But Emma didn't slow down. "Just a little more," she whispered to herself. Time crawled by. 30 long minutes passed, each step heavier than the last. The storm still raged, and the doubt was beginning to creep in. Could they really find their way back? Still, Emma pressed forward, never wavering. And then, finally, the rain began to lighten. The wind eased, and the forest started to fall quiet. It was like the storm had run out of breath. They had made it through the worst. The family stumbled out of the thick trees and into a wide, open clearing, the very same one where this wild journey had started. Emma had guided them through the darkest part of the forest and brought them back. They could see the outline of home now, sitting peacefully in the distance. It looked like a lighthouse in a sea of trees. The bear cubs, calmer now, sniffed the air and glanced around like they recognized something. It was almost like they knew they were close to their own home, too. But just as the family let out a breath of relief, the forest rustled again. Something huge moved through the trees. The ground seemed to tremble with each step. Danger, it seemed, wasn't done with them yet. John, Lisa, and Emma urged the cubs forward, desperate to keep moving, but the cubs didn't budge. They didn't look afraid. Instead, they stayed right where they were, sitting calmly, eyes fixed on the trees. And then, through the thick brush, a black nose pushed through the leaves. A massive bear stepped into the clearing, taller and broader than anything the family had ever seen. It looked as big as their SUV, its presence undeniable. It paused, scanning the area, and the forest held its breath. The Andersons didn't move a single inch. They knew better. Any sudden motion could be taken the wrong way, but the cubs didn't share that fear. Their tiny voices cried out with joy, and they rushed straight toward the massive bear. They knew who she was. The big bear let out a deep, familiar sound in return. It was their mother. She dropped to the forest floor, tired and worn, and let her babies curl up beside her. They pressed in close, safe at last. After all they'd been through, the family was whole again. Then the mother bear looked at the Andersons. Her dark eyes didn't show fear or anger, just something quiet, like understanding, maybe even gratitude. Any other day, she would have chased them off without hesitation, but not today. Today, these people had saved her cubs. She gave a soft huff, turned away, and walked back into the woods, her little ones close behind. The Andersons stood still for a while, watching them disappear. As they finally made their way home, something felt different in the air. It wasn't just relief, it was something deeper. A quiet pride. Gratitude. Especially in Emma, who, despite her tired steps, held her head high. She had led them through it all, and they had trusted her. In the days that followed, the bears returned, but not as a threat. They came as quiet visitors, always keeping a respectful distance, but always bringing that same feeling of wonder. The storm had changed something in all of them. Over time, the visits stopped. Seasons passed, years moved on, but the memory never faded. The Andersons knew the bears were still out there, living free, and that was enough. Most of all, Emma's bond with the forest stayed strong, and her family couldn't be prouder of their brave little girl. Have you ever heard a story where a child shared such a deep connection with the wild? We'd love to hear it. Share it in the comments below. Thanks for coming along on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next adventure. Until then, may your days be filled with wonder and your nights with the quiet magic of the wild.